our intention is to take this sort of next level of options trading that is quite common among professionals and make it easily presentable to a retail audience. So, we are a retail-focused brokerage, and you can buy stock, you can do everything like that on Options AI, but this is really our specialty, and we think it's something that the other brokerage platforms don't do well.
My next guest is CC Lagator. He's a co-founder of Options AI Financial LLC. You can check them out at optionsai.com. CC, welcome.
Nice to meet you, James.
Yeah, you as well. CC, I've got to say that options has been one of the asset classes that I have stayed away from because, well, I would say for obvious reasons. It's pretty arcane stuff, not easy to understand, and it's like golf. You can't become a great golfer by going out 3 times a year. You have to really know your stuff. So first off, can we start with an explanation just for the dumbest people in the audience, which is actually me. What is the difference between options in this context versus stock options?
Well, so stock options, generally when you hear that term, people are talking about, basically bonuses for working at a company and things like that. The tradable stock options universe, it sort of dates back to really sort of agricultural farming, type things when the futures markets and the options markets started, coming in Chicago, essentially. And, originally it was a way for hedging, hedging risk of weather, things like that. And then when equity options started, it was a way for, mutual funds and institutions to hedge risk of market crashes, things like that. And once, I would say sort of, like 80s, 90s, retail, markets started getting more involved in equity options. And at some point, with the launch of, brokerage platforms like E-Trade and things like that in the late 90s and early 2000s, you've seen basically consistently retail investors involved at about a level of like 25 to, sometimes up to 40% of the market. And generally what they're doing, and, this is one of the reasons for founding Options AI, which is a brokerage platform focused on, specializing in options, is that the majority of retail traders trade options, buy options very differently than institutions do. And the reason for that is they see it as a cheap, way to get long a stock in case it goes higher. They can make, 10x profit if Tesla goes up $100 or something like that. Now that can be fun every once in a while if you catch that move and you're right. But, over time, that's not a very high probability strategy. And so the way institutions trade options is they generally have a plan about what's going to happen in a stock or what could happen in a stock. And they'll do multi-leg option strategies, which are, can be as simple as buying a call in Tesla and then selling a call in Tesla where, beyond where you think it could go higher, right? And in that way, they're reducing their overall risk of what they're, putting on this trade. But at the same time, they're, increasing their probability that they're correct by lowering how far Tesla needs to move. And then even beyond that, sort of the next level of options trading is actually, in that case, if I'm bullish in Tesla, it's actually selling puts, right, to people that are bearish in Tesla. And there's ways to do that with multi-leg option strategies where you're selling a put spread that Tesla doesn't go down $50 in the next month, right? And if it doesn't, if it goes higher or even sideways, then you collect that premium, right? And so those are the sorts of ways where institutions are trading quite differently than retail investors. And that's sort of the impetus behind Options AI was to how to make these, slightly more sophisticated trades, but really basically how retail traders should be acting, to make that more accessible and easier through software.
So therein lies the sort of the crux of the matter is like when you're talking about placing multiple bets, in a way where you have to sort of have an ability to evaluate the possible outcomes across each bet. And it's all dependent on the movement in a single asset. That's where, people think, well, there's easier ways to make money. And so what is the compelling logic for a retail investor to trade options instead of just buy the stock?
Well, I would say the first thing, with retail investors that are, long a portfolio of stocks, generally the way people start getting into options, or the way they should get into options if they, they find themselves wanting to learn those markets, and they're not, options are not right for everyone. The first ways, aside from people that are like simply speculating, like what I was saying, the sort of behavior of YOLO trading, right? That is unfortunately how a lot of people first get involved. And it does not, over the long term, it's just not going to work out. I mean, betting on 15% probability things to occur is just not a good bet over time. What I would say with a retail investor that's curious about options, is looking for ways to add income to their portfolio, or hedge portfolio in times like this, for instance. Those are very interesting ways where they can get involved with options without that speculation, right? They're holding a long portfolio of stocks, and they're for instance hedging, saying right now the markets are scary. I'm willing to give up 3% of upside to basically be able to sleep at night. And I'm going to do that via put spreads, in the, SPY or QQQ or whatever your portfolio is, whatever parts of your portfolio are scaring you. And that's a very simple way where you're basically saying, I've got X amount of money in the market right now. I'm sort of terrified. I don't want to make a mistake and sell these stocks because I like a lot of my portfolio. How can I hedge this, sleep at night, watch the market go lower, and then maybe be able to buy more stocks, close to the lows? And then the other thing, when you hear the term income in options, it's a weird term. What that generally means is what I was describing earlier about like selling a put spread if you're bullish, right? What a lot of people can do is sell options against their stock. So essentially, if you were long Apple, and if Apple went 10% higher, you'd be thrilled. You could literally sell a call or even a call spread up at that level in Apple. And if Apple does not go, let's say it was a month out that you sold that call or a call spread, if Apple does not go up above that level, you collect that income, right? And then if Apple goes sideways or down, it acts as a little bit of a hedge. If Apple then does make that move, and you would have been a willing seller up there, then it just goes through that. If you sold a call, it goes through that call and you're called away in the stock, and you sold the stock, but you had earned that income up until that point. If you just do a call spread, you just sort of lose that little bit of upside in Apple, right? But you would have made it if Apple had gone sideways or lower. So those are the types of things where retail investors that aren't super active traders and aren't sitting in front of a computer all day long in front of a Bloomberg terminal. Those are the types of things that I think make perfect sense. And it's almost a shame that, a lot of people have this barrier to entry to that world, right? Because it's not that complicated. The math seems scary. It is not that complicated. And what we've done at Options AI is we've made it quite visual, where most people are used to looking on stock charts and seeing trends and seeing like a prior low, and that's my risk down there. And what we've done is we've visualized a lot of these trades so that you can actually see them on those stock charts.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it makes very obvious sense to me now why you would want to employ artificial intelligence to help you visualize that universe, as well as to make the decisions on how to deploy capital. So then, is your platform geared towards the retail investor exclusively, or is there sort of multiple tiers for different levels of investors?
It is built for the retail audience, and the intention was to, sort of bring these trades that you would see one of my co-founders has this thing he always says is, he's been in institutional options brokerage for, 25 years. He has never seen one of his clients do a single leg options trade. It just doesn't happen. Yet, if you, go to a platform like Robinhood, 99% of their order flow is single leg options bets, which are bets. They're basically like going to a roulette table and putting it down on one number. So, our intention is to take this sort of next level of options trading that is quite common among professionals and make it easily presentable to a retail audience. So, we are a retail focused brokerage, and you can buy stock, you can do everything like that on Options AI. But this is really our specialty, and we think it's something that the other brokerage platforms don't do well.
Mm-hmm. So do you have like a lot of different platforms have a practice, a sandbox, a sort of gamified trading access to the platform so that you can sort of see how it works and test out your theories and learn from it? Is that something that you guys provide?
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. We have free tools online where people can go and, so for instance, see like an earnings calendar of upcoming earnings and see what the options market is pricing for those moves on earnings, which I think is quite useful for people to sort of start to assess risk and, figure out how options work. And then, signing up for an Options AI account, you have to apply. It's a brokerage. You can basically, you don't have to fund to open up to start the account. You just basically have to go through the trading process and you can see the trades, you can get into these trades and all. We don't at the moment have anything where it's paper trading where you could see how it could play out, but you could just sort of jot it down on paper, what you arrived at and see, check in on it in a week.
Sure. And how easy would it be to test regressively ideas that you might have or that the system might suggest to you?
Well, we don't have back testing at the moment, which, that's something that I'm not totally, it's one of those things you hear a lot where, if I back tested this strategy, would it have worked over time? It's basically options are much more simple than that, which is the probability of profit that you see on the trades is not any sort of guarantee of profit, but it is essentially the options market is super efficient. And it is basically telling you that, 55% of the time that roughly this would have worked over time. So we have that, we put that front and center sort of risk, reward, and probability of profit. And what's interesting about like the risk and reward part is all of our trades on Options AI are defined risk. So that's one of the things that is sort of scary in options is a lot of people think, oh, I've heard about options. You can lose your house, overnight on something. And you can, right? If you're at a big hedge fund and you take on like crazy risk, there's a term called picking up pennies off the train track in derivatives, which is essentially like, risking 99 cents to make a penny, right? So we, on Options AI, everything is defined risk. It's basically, there's no infinite risk. And so when you see a trade and it's saying, I'm risking 400 to make 600 with X probability of profit, that's what it is, or vice versa.
Interesting. Okay, and so how does one get started if one wants to learn more?
Yeah, so they can visit optionsai.com and read more about the company. And read more about the platform and, see some videos and some, GIFs on the platform. And it's going to look very different than what they're used to seeing.
Well, I could tell you that I'm sufficiently curious that I'm going to go check it out myself. So this is not our last conversation, but we're going to leave it there for now. I really appreciate your participation. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Bye for now.